Happy Wednesday night. Welcome to Deep in the Plus. I'm your host, Rob Whiteside. Thank you guys, as always, for being with us. We appreciate you. If you haven't already, here's the deal. Subscribe to WDWNT TV for more great content. And, of course, give us a thumbs up as it helps people to find us. And tonight, we were talking about the latest installment of Star Wars that just ended. It's The Acolyte. With this crew, starting with Nicholas Cicero. That's you.
Starting with me? Oh, hi. How you doing? I'm here.
It's Desi.
The power of one, the power of two, the power of Manny, Jacinto.
Oh, wow. You threw a curveball there, didn't you? Yeah. And, of course, Mr. Rondiana. How are you?
Hey, it's been a long time.
It has. It's been a long time since you rock and rolled. By the way, Desi, this was for you, you know? I mean, I know that you are a kind of like hardcore, like you love him. And quite honestly, so do I. I was saying that to my wife tonight. I was like, yeah, he's hot. And then she was like, no, you don't mean it. I was like, kind of. So this is a brand new chapter in Star Wars. This goes back to the High Republic. This actually just finished airing last night. They dropped the last one as we are live now. So if you haven't already seen all 8 episodes of The Acolyte, you may want to close this book because we are not sparing any spoilers tonight. So we would love to have you with us. If you haven't seen it yet, maybe go watch it, come back and watch it with us, because I think most of the spoilers happen in the episode we just watched. So so again, just make sure that you keep that in mind. We've talked about this before, and I want to ask this to the panel, and I think I ask this every single time we talk about Star Wars. This takes place in the High Republic, which is 100 years before the Galactic, or before the events basically of Phantom Menace. They jump all around. They jump around, and no other franchise that I know of, maybe Star Trek, but I mean, no other franchise jumps around as much as this franchise does on Disney Plus, with a series that's in the future, it's in the past, it's between 2 movies. Nick, I mean, do you think people pay attention and can keep up, or am I the only one with this sticking point?
I think people can keep up. I think if you take everything as its own piece of Star Wars, I think you're okay. I think there are, just like anything that we've been talking about lately, I think the more you know about books, comics, other pieces of Star Wars, the more you can appreciate some of the things in the show itself. But I think this one especially did a fine job standing alone, and it didn't matter that it jumped in the Star Wars timeline in any way. I am surprised that they didn't, as far as I know, and I'm sorry if I'm forgetting something from like the first episode, I don't believe they set it up in any kind of way as far as telling us when this occurred in the timeline. Like, am I correct in thinking that?
I mean, they say in the opening crawl, this is 100 years before the Galactic Republic.
They say 100 years before the Galactic Republic. What is that? So does that mean, is that 100 years before what we saw in the prequels?
Yes,
I don't
basically.
even know what I watched, and I keep track of these, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's what they're saying is this is basically 100 years before the prequels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so they did say that. I kind of knew that, but I didn't know if they outwardly said that. I forgot they said that in the crawl. All right, I think that's fair. But I don't even know if your casual Star Wars fan cares or knows what that means. So I don't know if that matters to enjoy this. But
yeah,
so I think this could be enjoyable for anybody that doesn't even understand the timeline.
Okay, Ron.
I haven't been keeping up with a lot of the comics and the books lately. I just have lost the will and the time to do so. But like, isn't most of the High Republic stuff set even well before this? Like a couple hundred years? Maybe before Battle of Yavin?
Yeah. I mean, again, this story is still part of the High Republic. I don't think it's the beginning of the High Republic. When it was originally pitched, It was, this is the High Republic. I think this is the waning parts of it. Obviously, the Jedi are starting to fall apart at this point. So, I mean, I do think that we are in the waning years of it, but it's still considered, I think, High Republic. Desi, thoughts?
I mean, I watch Young Jedi Adventures all the time, so I'm very familiar with the High Republic.
Uh,
I don't feel like you need to know really much other than this takes place before the prequels. Other than that, does it really matter for anybody who's a casual viewer to know like the exact timeline? Obviously, there are some crazy people on the internet who get really upset about Kiadi-Mundi's birthday not
ha,
being accurate in this show. But really, does anybody really care about that? I don't think so.
Did
I think you
anybody
gotta
really
know.
care about Coyote-Mundi?
yes.
I think you, but wait, whoa. Before we get to that, I think you got to know that it's not like the Mandalorian is walking into the next scene. I
Right.
think you have to know that this is
Right.
not taking place during the time of
It's
Obi-Wan,
before.
and yeah,
Yeah.
it's before. So, and the thing they drop at the end, which we're definitely going to talk about, didn't care for it. I just didn't care for it. But anyway, I mean,
Well, can we say something like you said that this was the beginning of the fall of the Jedi. I don't. I'm gonna already say that I don't. Didn't you say that?
I said this was as they were waning because they're starting to
Waning.
struggle. They're starting like
Waning started to struggle.
the senator who comes in and he says, "Look, we're going to start to put you under oversight, and we don't trust you guys, and you guys have too much power." And I love that he said, "You guys are like you're basically overpowered creatures who are like you're going around and you're unsupervised and you're chalking yourself up as a religion." And I thought, okay, somebody's calling them out, and like that's the first time we've seen something like that. It gave me Sokovia Accord vibes. It really did. This whole thing about, well, we don't know that we're going to be able to control you, so we're going to have to figure out ways to do that, and we need to give you oversight. And so you've been too overpowered, operating off the leash for too long, and so that's why I feel like this is where they're like, there's a chink in the armor. I'm not saying
I
that
have
they're
two.
lost, but I'm saying
Okay.
that.
So
Well, I have two
one
questions here.
Wait, let's go
Oh.
to Nick, and then we'll go to Desi.
Well, so my two questions here are if you like I semi agree with you that they started poking holes in the armor of the Jedi here, but are we to believe that it took 100 years to get from here to what we saw in the prequels when the Jedi were still held in this high council and held in high regard, and then we were supposed to have seen the fall of the Jedi there in the prequels, right? And my second question, kind of related, is that what everybody expected to see from this series? Because I did not expect to see the beginning of the fall of the the poking holes in the Jedi's armor in this series.
And I swear I'm going to go to you next, Desi, on this. But let me answer what I think for that, Nick. Is that in the as far as the Jedi go, by the time we see them in the Phantom Menace, they are already under Senate rule. They are working with the Senate, but
Okay.
they're in check by the time we see them there. So this one, they're kind of like outlaw. Like they are the law in this one. They are the law. They're the ones who are sending people out, and you can get that vibe from the people who who run into them out in space. Like, oh well, like why are you guys here? What are you doing now? Why, like almost like they're like there's tyranny a little bit, which again sort of starts to paint those lines between like good and evil. Like where's the are they all good at this point? Desi, go. What do you got?
Well, one thing from Young Jedi Adventures and from this show is that the Jedi Temple on Coruscant has gold spires. Like the tips of those spires are gold. By the time we get to the Phantom Menace, the gold is gone. So there has obviously been a fall at some point between this show and Young Jedi Adventures and the Phantom Menace, where the Jedi are not as rich and powerful as they once were. Just something that I happen to notice as somebody who watches a lot of Young Jedi Adventures.
Will you be quoting and referencing Young Jedi Adventures all night long, please?
I mean, Nubs is definitely my favorite Jedi.
Oh, I mean, obviously. All right. So anyway, I'm sorry I got us off track with that, but I would say again, like I feel like there is a purpose for knowing that this takes place before the prequels. But I do sometimes feel like if you were a casual Star Wars viewer, and I try to think about that when we're doing Park Center, if you're a casual park goer, or if you know if you are a casual viewer of Star Wars, will you be able to follow the fact that like where Ahsoka takes place in the timeline versus where Obi-Wan takes place, which versus this versus Young Jedi Adventures versus the Bad Batch. It's it's all over the place. It's not in order like the MCU is. Every MCU series that comes out is pretty much somehow
Black
in
Widow.
order of what's up.
Black Widow came out
Black
after she
Widow.
died.
I said pretty much, pretty much. I mean, obviously Captain Marvel, obviously Guardians, the first one, are a little bit off. Captain America, the first Avenger, but then they kind of put it back in the timeline. But anyway, so that was why I
I
brought
will
that up.
say those are also set in an Earth world where there's there's visual cues to the time period, so it's a little bit easier to follow in the MCU.
Okay. No, I
When you
don't
have
disagree.
Blockbuster Video in Captain Marvel, it's
The 80s and 90s.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little early.
All right,
And
Ron.
Andor's just going to make it worse because Andor season 2 is going to be jumping years between episodes.
Yeah.
Like we're supposed, so it's just going to get more confusing because it's supposed to cover what a 5-year gap in 10 episodes. So
Mhm.
we're going to be seeing that go along, and I think that's doable, but it's still just you got to figure out. You have to like the books are labeled High Republic or when they have and the old ones, the legends had New Jedi Order or Age of Rebellion like on the covers. Like maybe they need to put Star Wars High Republic, the Acolyte,
And
or
maybe they
Age of
don't.
Rebellion,
Yeah.
Andor.
And again, maybe they don't. Maybe this is just me. We have a super chat from Jungle Cruiser who said, "Everyone, just chill out. All right. Remember, it's all set in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Every character created was dead before the story started. Sit back and enjoy the show and the stories." Sarcasm alert. Yes, thank you, Jungle Cruiser. Appreciate the super chat. Thank you for that. I just think to myself of like my wife or my daughter watching this one who, I grew up with the original trilogy and then, worked in the prequels and then all of the conversations with my generation of parents as their kids were coming up is what order do you show these to your kids in? Do you show it to them in like the prequels first and then the original trilogy? And I don't want to get into that conversation tonight at all. We're already getting into problems here. But anyway, so that's why I always worry about the order in general of Star Wars because there are a lot of stories to tell. And there really are, and so I when we wrap this up, I will definitely want to know what you guys thought of it, but also if you think it's something that's a good entry level because it is at the beginning. It's the beginning of what we know. If it's a good entry level for somebody who has not done Star Wars before, so. The basic gist of this story is that there are these people who are practicing the Force outside of the system. In deep space, and then there are the Jedi who are basically ruling the area. They're policing. They're keeping the peace. They are the peacekeepers. And
Are they Night Sisters? That's something I've had discussions about. Were they just another type of Force Witch, or were they actually Night Sisters? Because
I don't.
that really
I
could
think they were
color
just
how we see the whole interaction with the Jedi. Because we know the Night Sisters are dark side users. If these were the Night Sisters, we know whatever happened. We know the Jedi were still fighting the dark side. If they weren't, that brings something completely different. So leaving that kind of vague, makes a good mystery, but it really kind of hurts the storytelling when you have established canon.
Well,
I
all
don't
right.
think
So
they're Night Sisters.
so you're but what you're talking about is you're talking about the Osha and May's moms is what you're talking about here, right? I thought it was interesting that we have 2 episodes and then we go back to learn the history. Did you like that one? Almost felt like it was kind of in a bottle. It's important to the entire story that we know that history, but we have two like episodes that are now where they keep talking about, and Desi and I did a review of the very first one. We did a watch along of the first Acolyte, and so we talked about a lot of the things that were in that first episode. But after the first two episodes, the third one goes back to the witches and and like kind of the beginnings for May and Osha, because until that point they're just kind of like hinting, hey, something went wrong, somebody did somebody wrong, and so all of these four Jedis have to pay for it. And you're just like, wait, what happened, what went wrong? And there's a lot of those little mystery Easter eggs, Nick, that they drop along the way, and a lot of them that they don't seal up. A lot of them are left out there for us to wonder for what I assume is going to be season 2.
Well, this unfortunately, the way I view this entire season was it was a setup for a season 2, and I personally, my personal thoughts about this season is it could have been much shorter, and whatever they want to show us in season 2 should have been here, because all this, to my opinion, all this season was set up, and I didn't really appreciate that. Now, there were parts that I kind of appreciate, but there was, you're talking about the flashbacks specifically. I think the flashbacks could have been just like a prologue thing at the beginning. I think they got a little too fancy, honestly. I think that might be my overall issue with the pacing of the season. I don't mind as much where they got me by the end, but I had real issues with the pacing of the season. It just wasn't pleasant to watch on a week-to-week basis. I didn't have time between when yesterday's episode dropped to tonight to binge the entire season in one span. I'd like to do that and see what I feel about the entire season. I'm not bashing the entire season as a whole, but I do feel there was a lot of garbage in this season, and there was a lot of stuff that felt like they were either wasting my time or trying to be too cute about how they were doing it. And I feel like the flashbacks could have been some kind of prologue that they took us through, and then took us through the season. I think the gimmick of a flashback is becoming too ingrained in storytelling in streaming television these days. And I think Star Wars just like took it and said, oh, we should make this more interesting by doing some kind of flashback, by creating a mystery and then flashing back. When I don't think they had to do that. I think all they had to do was set up the motivation for what's going on in this universe with the flashback, and then tell the story. And I think they could have gotten more meat in the story if they were able to do that and tighten things up a little bit.
It's interesting you would say that, because in the things that bothered me, and we talked about Book of Boba Fett and we talked about Andor, the things that bothered me in there is how they were telling you the story from the past while they were telling you the one from the future. And so, it's like we have a little bit of the present, and then we're in the back to tank and he's remembering the Sand People, and then we have a little bit of the present and he's back in the tank remembering the so like that flip-flop I didn't get into that as much, so that didn't pick up for me until we stopped doing that in like episodes 4 and 5, or 3, 4, and 5, and we met Mandalorian and we went on, and that's Book of Boba Fett. Andor's same thing, with him remembering his childhood, kind of going back and forth with that, jumping back and forth. But it really got going for me once they got past that and introduced it. And maybe that's the problem with them having to introduce like new material that we're not familiar with. We need to know, they need to tell us everything and maybe dump it all into 8 episodes. But to your point, like, I feel like they were just getting, like, it was just getting good. And then they're like, oh, there may be a season 2. We don't know when. But for those of you who have watched, there are 8 episodes, and you can see here, the third episode, Destiny, is the one I was talking about with the witches, where, they go back, and that episode is pretty much just in the past to explain this awful thing that happened. So, Ron, thoughts?
Yeah, I actually really like the first half of the season. Why it's a mystery, why they're tracking down. I think using the first flashback was fine. Using a second flashback episode to like fill in the pieces is bad storytelling. It's just like, haha, we won't. We're just. It's like an old Sherlock Holmes, like a Arthur Conan Doyle, where you don't get the clues to be able to solve the mystery and figure everything out yourself. He just explains it at the end, and that's what that second flashback episode felt like. It's like, oh yeah, what we showed you, that's not all of it. So working with that second flashback really, I think episodes 6 and 7 just took a narrative that was going and moving, and let's just have a bunch of conversations that really could have taken place in about 10 minutes instead of a full episode, and then retrofitting an entire another episode just suck the life out of the series. And I think the flashbacks could have worked if they were good, and the time jumps worked here in a certain way where they didn't in Boba Fett, because the characters were at least different ages, so we could tell there was a different time when we didn't realize there was a 5-year gap in Book of Boba Fett for like most of the season.
Right. When we Desi, when we talked about the first episode, one of the things I was shocked about, and just for you guys so you know, is that we bring in Carrie-Anne Moss, who I thought was just going to be the star of the show, and then we just kill her in the first 8 minutes of the series. Now, obviously, she shows up again in these flashbacks, which I didn't know at the time. But when we watched that first episode, I thought she wasn't coming back. By the time we watched the first episode, though, Desi, you had already watched the second episode and knew very clearly that there was a force wielding Wookiee.
Yes. Kelnaka was definitely one of the highlights of this story for me. The flashbacks, it wasn't that I disliked the flashbacks in general. I wouldn't have minded episode 3 so much, but the witches themselves, I just didn't like. I didn't like the witches. I hated the chanting. The chanting was so cringy. The song, oh my God, so awful. Without the chanting and the songs, maybe I would have liked episode 3 better. What I really didn't like was episode 7, where we went back and did the same episode basically all over again and had to see the same things, but just, from Soul's point of view. What I thought would have been a lot stronger would have been, you can keep episode 3 as is, just cut the darn song, cut it. And then in episode 7, rather than rehashing the full thing all over again, just have Soul tell his point of view and the snippets that we didn't see, tell his point of view to May, have Chimere telling at least what he knew what happened from May to Osha, for us to be able to piece that all together ourselves. And then it would also be nice if they did it that way. Then we can see May's reaction to what Soul is telling her. Oh yeah, okay, that would make sense. If somebody turned into a cloud of smoke in front of me, I'd probably freak out and start slashing at the air too. And from Osha's point of view, to hear that, oh my God, Soul's the one who killed my mom, and he's been training me and kept this secret this whole time. Yeah, that's going to make me angry. That's going to turn me to the dark side. I think that would have been stronger than having 2 full episodes that were nothing but flashback. The best part about episode 7, though, was Kelnaka fighting. That was awesome.
So let me ask you this. Let's jump ahead to episode 5. Episode 5 was my favorite episode, and I felt like at the end of 5, where does it go from here? Because this is the first time where we finally figure out who Chimere is. Which, by the way, let me pause there and throw to Nick and say, personally, I kind of wish, and I know Manny is, again, we've established he is Beefcake. We've established that. However,
it's like, stop smiling, Desi.
I would have preferred us not to know who that was, because they seem to be very quick to take off helmets these days. Like Kylo. Like I would have rather had Kylo's helmet on most of the series.
So wrong. So wrong. I
Okay.
have the opposite opinion in every way. But go ahead, Nick.
I want Nick to tell me first because I already know your opinion.
Well, so and I apologize here. Episode 5, is that where he took the bath?
No,
Like,
no.
oh,
No, episode 5 is the one where we still don't like we've kind of put it together at this point. Like I feel like we all
okay.
kind of sort of knew that was
Oh,
him
okay.
because he has disappeared and you know, he's just helping May to serve the master and we don't know that he's the master, but we kind of do because he
So
just
is it
kind
the
of
one
sort
where he
of
kills
disappears.
a bunch of Jedi?
He
Is
just
that
kills
episode 5?
everybody. It's the
Kills
episode where he
everybody,
kills everybody. Yeah, but I
yeah.
would have preferred him not to have taken his helmet off, and maybe it was a reveal at the very end, or maybe we wait until next season. I just feel like they're too quick to do that. But I mean, obviously they did it for Desi. But what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think you need to reveal him. I think if anything, this season moved too slow. Like honestly, so I would have been more upset if they prolonged that reveal. There was a lot of people who already suspected it, so let's just get it on the table. Let's see who it is, because I think I we knew. I also knew like that's not the big bad, right? They're not going to show us the big bad right there. He has a master. He has something that he is, toiling with. There's they wants that he's looking for his number two or whatever it is. But like I think no, I definitely think the reveal happened at the right time, and but I also feel the pacing of the entire season was a bit too slow. But yeah, episode 5 was absolutely amazing. I love that there's actual stakes in this season where we're actually killing people that we're getting to know. That's really important because that's showing like I don't know like another level of commitment to this storytelling. But I so that's what I mean. The season was so inconsistent because I feel like it sped along and showed me some great things, and then slowed down. I was like, not too fast, and then by the end of the season, I was like, okay, we're not gonna get to where. And maybe it's a misconception on what I was expecting of this season. I was expecting to see more into the Sith, not just one Sith kind of toiling with emotions, almost like Kylo Ren, almost like we're dealing too much in these emo Sith people that like I don't look, I don't care about Sith feelings and I don't care about I don't want to I like the black and white universe George Lucas gave me. I don't want this universe where I could possibly feel sympathy for the Sith. Like, there's no reason for me to feel sympathy for the Sith. Let me see an evil Sith. Let me see them plot and be evil. And let me see the good guys come against them and fight against them. And that's what honestly, that's what I expected to see this season. And I didn't see that. Instead, I saw something that most of the season made me feel like, wait, are they trying to make me feel bad for the Sith? Are they trying to make me feel sympathy for the bad guys? That is not Star Wars storytelling. That is kind of modern storytelling where you're trying to create this anti-hero a la like Breaking Bad and stuff like that, which is great television.
But that's not great Star
To
Wars.
me, that's and I hate to be, that's not my Star Wars. But look, Star Wars is black and white. Star Wars is good and evil. And I feel like, in general, that's what it needs to be. And
Yeah.
I don't feel this was good enough television to be on the level of a Breaking Bad where you're creating sympathy for a Sith. Now, if you wanted to create a story like that, but make it, you got to have better storytelling than what we saw in Acolyte.
Well,
At least,
before wait, hold on, Ron. Before I throw it to you, I just want to say though, to add to what you just said, Nick, is they made you feel something like bad for the Sith, but they also made you kind of question the Jedi, which again, to your
Sure.
point, is not what we're used to, Ron.
Yeah, I mean, at least with like Kylo, and it really even happened with Anakin. We feel somewhat bad because these guys are being manipulated. Now, maybe we saw near the end that Smiley here, whatever his name is, I hated that mask.
Anya.
It felt like something out of
I loved
the
it.
Joker would have created. Other one, I also called him Darth Keanu because his entire intonation, the entire show reminded me of early '90s Keanu characters. Um, but like maybe he is being manipulated. Maybe that's why we're supposed to feel a little sympathy because we see. I'm assuming that was Plagueis we saw for that half a second, but that's just maybe if that's where they're going, that's where they need to go, and not wait another season to get us there. Like Kylo was flawed, and we were supposed to feel sympathy from him, and then he throws that away for in Last Jedi, and then they bring it back again. It is an inconsistent storytelling with trying to do that black and white, and with the as you were saying with the Jedi too, just they were arrogant and full of themselves. They weren't scheming and evil for their fall. And that's what I think. There's something missing here, and all of those just don't work.
Oh boy, Desi, rebuttal.
You're all wrong. Um, that's what I liked about this show. I liked being able to see, why the Jedi fell, why, they had all this hubris. They were too powerful, too full of themselves. They even said in the prequels that their judgment was clouded. I wanted to see that. I loved seeing that. My issues with this show were the pacing, the stupid song, but seeing the fall or seeing, the bad parts of the Jedi, I had no problem with. I thought that was super interesting. And for me, maybe it's just because I'm a woman and Manny Jacinto is super attractive. I enjoyed seeing him seduce May to the dark side. I enjoyed seeing that actual seduction to the dark side versus just like, okay, I'm just going to be bad all of a sudden, which is more like what Anakin felt like. It didn't feel like it was a slow fall to the dark side with Anakin. With Anakin, it felt more like a snap decision.
Disagree with that.
That's part of the problem.
Okay,
That's
if you do not have the animated shows, it was.
that is a big problem with Revenge of the Sith. Should have been about 10 hours of content of watching Anakin fall there. I think it felt too rushed in that.
But
at least we established him before he falls, so we have a reason to be sympathetic.
But to your point, Desi, 5 seasons of Clone Wars sitting in between it, there is development. But like you're saying, that's in animation, that's not in the movie. Nick, you are hard disagree on that.
Well, I mean, I do. I think it was. I think Ron is right. They could have had more character development there. I think that was a problem with a lot of the prequels. But I think in general there was a clear motivation, and it was fear of loss. It was the seduction of, I can help you save your loved one that is going to die, and keep them alive. I mean, that's a seduction. I think it was a seduction in a different way. But I will say, I do want to say, can we all at least agree that the fall of the Jedi was mostly Mog's fault? Like, because I mean, he was just a ridiculous Jedi and very incompetent, and most of the Jedi seemed very like I don't know, just like they didn't seem like regal Jedi that we saw in the prequels. This was a different era of Jedi where you have out of shape Jedi, where you have like this guy Mog that is walking around that like has no clue what he's doing, and I think it was just an incompetent era of Jedi that started to lead to this downfall.
It was a bad batch.
It's because Vanessa was promoted way too quickly. I think she was the youngest Jedi Knight of all time. I think she was 14 when she became a Jedi Knight.
Wow.
And then I think Imri, who I'm assuming is now Chimere, was her first Padawan who went missing.
Right.
Obviously, she did a terrible job with him. It looks like she whipped him with her saber in the back.
Laser saber or what? Yeah.
And then was obviously surprised that he was still alive and covered all of that up. And then you see Mog, who is her current Padawan. I think Venestra is a terrible teacher. Also, she was probably my least favorite actor in the show.
She was pretty bad.
Her acting.
Yeah.
Do we think Yoda came in and like cleaned things up a little bit for a while and tried to get things on track? Because honestly, what we saw in the prequels didn't look as bad as what we saw here. So they seemed a little bit more regal and coordinated and together in the prequels than they did in this series.
We didn't.
In the prequels, they serve the Republic. Everything they do, they're sent on a mission by the Senate.
Yeah. Let me stop for a second here, though, and let's just celebrate. This may be, to me, one of the greatest, like, lightsaber deaths of all time.
Oh, poor Jackie.
Yeah,
She goes that she breaks his helmet off, and then he goes, boom, 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 boom. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you like the character, but again, like, there was some really good, like, in this episode, some really good fighting, I feel like.
The highlight of the entire show, I think, was the choreography and the fighting. I liked the fighting with Carrie-Anne Moss in episode 1. This entire episode, episode 5, with all of the fighting, I loved in episode 7 the fighting with Kelnaka, and then in the finale, all of that fighting. I think that was the highlight of the show. I understand people's problem with, some of the pacing, some of the storyline, some of the acting, but the fighting, I think we can all agree, was pretty good, especially in episode 5.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think that episode 5, the fighting scenes were pretty amazing. So let's talk about Darth Plagueis.
The what?
Have I ever told you the story? That was an interesting drop, and that was in, again, I feel like a lot of the stuff that we would talk about as like what the heck and fan theories and all that stuff would come from episode 8, because in episode 8 there was just a lot of stuff, and I don't know whether Ron or Nick or both said it, but it's just like they rushed a lot of stuff seemingly into that, because they're like, oh, we got a lot of stuff to tell you before we close this out. I mean, I think number 8 is the most important one, which is why I was saying, like, I feel like if you haven't watched it, you need to be careful. I know that Desi's favorite is probably number 6. I get that. But but the most nakedness ever in a Star Wars movie. Maybe Princess Leia.
I've seen House of the Dragon. This is not that bad.
So Ron, tell me, the Darth Plagueis thing, as soon as you see the creepy fingers come around the side and then they kind of show from the other side, did you go, oh, yep, that's who that is?
That was my first guess. I mean, it had to be, like, he just wasn't capable of, he didn't, as the evil master, he didn't seem capable enough of orchestrating all of this. So I think showing something in the sidelines, whether it's direct or not, really helped that. But once again, it's like the pacing was just all over the place. Like, all these things that happened in 8 could have happened in 6 and 7 as well, and story that left us cliffhangers, like all of that just
all right.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. Let me ask you this, Nick. You said Sith. Is this the Sith? Because he very, very carefully says, I think you guys would call me Sith. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and if that's the case, and he has an Acolyte, and then Plagueis is his master, then there's 3. Oh, I'm sorry. Desi, go ahead. Do you want to say something?
I don't think he's a Sith. And I'm not entirely sure that Plagueis is his master. Plagueis could be lurking around in the shadows looking for an apprentice for himself. It's not guaranteed that Chimere is his apprentice and Plagueis is the master. And Chimere says that he doesn't have a name, but that a Jedi might call him a Sith. And during that episode, they were playing Kylo Ren's theme song, which I'm pretty sure is, and just by the look of him, the look of his helmet, his feats, I think he's a Ren. I think he is one of the founding members of the Knights of Ren, and I think that he and Osha will, if there is a season 2, they will start the Knights of Ren.
There better be a season 2 at this point, I feel like.
I hope so. I know that a lot of the internet doesn't. Sounds like not everybody here thinks so, but I enjoy it.
There's things I want answered, so yeah, I hope there's something, but I hope it's tighter.
As soon as I saw him, I knew that was Plagueis, because I know what Plagueis looks like. I know that he's a moon, and I started freaking. I was like, what? And I was like, that's Plagueis! And he's like, who? And I'm like, have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
Right. All right, wait. So we have a super chat from Rob Bazemore. Rob, thank you so much. The season needed to be 12 episodes, so any Jedi... I guess so many Jedi died, and we didn't care because there was no time to develop the majority of the characters. My kids applauded a little when Yord bought the big one because they were done with him.
So at the beginning of the episode, when Yord gets cut in the leg, I'm like, oh, of course, everybody else gets run through, but Yord just gets a little cut in the leg. That's got to be plot armor because Yord's one of the characters we're supposed to care about. And they were pushing him really hard online with the whole Yord horde thing. But when his neck snapped, my mind was blown. I did not see that coming.
To Nick's point, there were stakes. Anybody could go. No one was safe, not even Yord. So there are a lot of things that happen in this series that are things that either I feel like we've evolved the powers or the power spectrum of the Sith and the Jedi over time. In the very beginning with the original A New Hope, they couldn't really do much. Darth Vader could throw a box, but then by the time we see Obi-Wan, Darth Vader is super powered. In this one, Chimere can wipe minds. Is that canon?
That was one of my least favorite parts.
Okay.
I didn't love it.
I mean, is that a big leap from changing somebody's mind? I don't know.
Well, I mean,
it could just be a deeper Jedi mind trick.
Permanent brain damage.
Or when Kylo was pulling, the interrogation, maybe he was actually pulling memories out of people, not just pulling them out,
He did try that on me at the theme park. I was in the interrogation room. It's a long story. I'll tell you about it sometime, but don't worry, we got out safe. What about this little fella? His motives are very sketchy to me the entire time.
Come on. All right, that little dude, no. There is no explanation for anything he did, and no one on this panel can tell me any different. He was mysterious. There is no telling, if he told Saul, what was going on. There was no explanation why he damaged the ship. What is this dude's motivation? I honestly thought he was going to be some evil dude at the end, but it never turned out to be. Nothing he did, and they pinpointed him all the time, oh, he's sniffing it out, oh, he knows what's going on, oh, he's hot on the trail. Nothing panned out, nothing mattered with that dude, and that's my problem with this season. Nothing freaking mattered till the last episode, and everything happened there.
He's actually the apprentice.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, I agree with you because when he was he sabotaged Saul's ship while he was chasing after May.
Why?
I was like, why? Yeah, exactly. I was like, what? Ron has a theory.
No, I have nothing. I was just like, okay, what is going on here? And I'm just like, and if I have subtitles on it, it says speaks in Tyrannese or whatever. I forgot what it said. And I'm just like, no, there's no reason. Who's he loyal to? We have no clue.
There's a lot of characters that you end up not liking in this thing. I mean, again, here's one. But yeah, exactly. By the way, this is the first time I've ever seen, to me, the Jedi as a uniform. Like that they're all exactly wearing the same thing, which I guess is, again, maybe this time period. But they didn't get into that too much. But it's like, usually it's like the robes are all over the place, right? And in this one, they're exactly the same. No? No.
Obviously, you don't watch Young Jedi Adventures enough to know.
Oh my God!
that
Oh my God! I knew it was coming back. Why didn't I see that? Tell me everything about Young Jedi Adventures. Welcome to Deep in the Plus, Young Jedi Adventures.
I'm just saying that in Young Jedi Adventures, they all have the golden robes. That's just, it was the uniform back in the High Republic. I'm assuming that by the time we get to the prequels and they're all like wearing brown and tan and black, that it's like they don't have the money for golden uniforms anymore.
Yeah. All right, let me ask you guys this: the switcheroo at the end, when we've got our, we open up this 8-episode series with May being the big bad, and at the beginning, because we don't know what else is coming. We just know that she's going around killing Jedi. And then she's on a mission, and we kind of feel like that's her mission, and then we find out it's not her mission. She's been assigned this mission. And then we have the flip, where first they tell us it's the same person, and then they flip and say, okay, really, Osha has been the Acolyte all along. Let me start with you, Nick. Did you go, oh, that's really cool? I feel like you didn't, because you had a problem with the good and bad flip and flop, right?
Well, all right, and again, maybe this is me missing something, but it's another thing that doesn't freaking matter if you're telling me that it's the same person created with the Force and they're not two different people. It's the same person. So what the hell does it matter that one is good, one's evil? And that wasn't surprising that they flipped it. That is like lazy storytelling, that you're telling me a story where they're gonna flip. And one's going to be seduced by the dark side, and like there's
Have you seen Manny?
There's no meat to this story, and the fact that they're the same, like, again, are they technically the same person? Because then it really doesn't matter if one's good and one's evil. It really doesn't. Like, there's no difference here, and I don't understand. I'm confused at what they're trying to tell me. Like, I was very clear in what they were telling me in other Star Wars stories. In this story, I'm very unclear in what story they're trying to tell me. Where are they trying to go with this? And that's what I mean about this first season literally being set up. And so, Desi, when you say I don't want a season 2, I need a season 2, or else this was 100% worthless. There is no value to these 8 episodes of Star Wars. Zero. It added nothing to the Star Wars storytelling unless there's a season 2 to continue it and tell me what the hell just went on in these 8 episodes.
Yeah, Ron, you look like you want to say something.
And they didn't even flip-flop. May is not good at the end. They just kind of gave, like, kind of brain damaged her and just left her back. And I thought they were going to be, like, merged back together somehow at the end of the episode. Yeah. That's where I thought it was going, and I thought at least that would have been something interesting and new, as opposed to, well, we don't really need to have both of them good, both of them bad, and we don't really want to have her solely forgive the Jedi, so this is where we're at with May, and it's...
And I thought that as a community, Star Wars people hated the whole midichlorian, made from the Force kind of a thing. And now here we've doubled down on it, literally doubled down on it.
I don't think the making...
let me go to Desi and we'll come back to you, Ron.
That's why I think if they made episode 7 rather than a full flashback, if we had Soul telling May what happened from his point of view and Chimere telling Osha what happened, then you could see more of May maybe turning to the light and being like, you know what, the Jedi weren't so bad after all. And Osha being like, no, I can totally see why the Jedi, you know, from this point of view, the Jedi are evil. And it would explain them flip-flopping a bit more. Also, I'm under the impression they were always, Osha was always the evil twin, not evil, but the more dark-sided one, because at the beginning, you see her like looking like she's force choking that butterfly, and then all of a sudden May comes along and does the same thing, and Osha's like, how dare you? You can't do things like that. I'm like, you just did that. And the light side is about selflessness, the dark side is about selfishness. We see May being selfless and just doing what's right for the coven and doing the ascension because that's what's right for the coven. And Osha being like, no, I want to do my own thing. I want to be selfish. I want to go run off and be a Jedi. That's selfishness. That's the dark side. I think that they were always that way.
Yeah, which goes back to Nick's thing of it's just muddy as all get out. Ron, let me ask you this because you've read a lot of the books. I think you've said
not so much the new legend stuff. I was
the bleeding of the Kyber crystal.
That didn't bother me because that's kind of been established. I haven't liked since they switched to the whole Kyber crystal thing, but at least the bleeding of the Kyber crystal has been established, and the de-bleeding, like Ahsoka's saber she had most of the time post Order 66 were the de-bled ones from her book. She took them back, so that didn't bother me. But I mean, there's force powers coming out of nowhere, whatever, and the bleeding and that. But I never liked the Kyber crystal stuff in the first place. I don't know. Especially when they made that the power for the Death Star. That really just kind of was like, okay. No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's a thing, but I like that was one of the things that I saw break out that a lot of people are like, "Oh my gosh, like they finally showed it, you know, it's finally there, the bleeding of the Kyber crystal." And I was like, "Oh,
Yep.
yeah, you
That was
can
one of
buy
the
the
things
blue
I
ones
love.
or the red ones at Doc Ondar's." All right, so this was something that I saw online and shared on Twitter that I thought was funny. It says when your force-sensitive twin, who's been separated from your sister, and you idolize your father for being a perfect Jedi, but you were lied to because he actually killed your mother, and now a guy dressed in black wearing a mask wants you to join the dark side. Like, okay, yeah, there are a lot of similarities between the original, I guess, trilogy. A lot of the things they were saying about, you know, strike him down and, you know, your training will be complete and things like that. Do we like that, Nick? Or did you see any of that? Or were you just so frustrated with this, you're like, this ain't Star Wars?
No, I definitely saw that. Um, I I think part of my problem was that the way part of the way the story was told, and that is why I'm not totally tossing this out. People, this seems divisive, and there seems to be people that are seeing value in this story that I didn't see watching it week to week. That's why I really want to sit down and watch it through. I'm going to binge it from start to finish again, probably in a couple sittings, so it's not week to week. I want to see how this story sits with me because I do think that there was part of me was like, really, are we telling stories of twins again? Like, and this whole idea, like, it seemed to be repeating the past. And I didn't really or the future. I didn't really understand. I guess my main problem is I don't understand the value of this story. It didn't entertain me as a standalone story, and it also didn't feel like it added anything to the mythology of Star Wars for me. And so that's my biggest problem with this. And so when you ask about the twins, yeah, I saw the similarities like that. That's not lost on me, and I don't mind if you're telling me a story. Look, I love Force Awakens. It's a retelling of New Hope. I mean,
Right.
come on.
Right.
But I adore that movie. And
Yeah.
so if you tell the story right and in the right way, I just think this story suffered from a lot of different things. And I think part of it, from what I hear, might be because of the different directors for the different episodes, and maybe that played into it too. And maybe that's partly why I don't feel a connective tissue throughout the whole entire thing, and I feel this roller coaster ride on it. I'm like, yeah, this is look. After the first episode, I was like, this is awesome. I'm gonna really like this. And after the second episode, I was like, after the third episode, I was like, ugh. And then, like, I think like 4, 5, and 6, I was kind of like, oh, okay. And then it kind of like went down again. And then episode 8, I think episode 8 was great. And so, like, there's this roller coaster ride for me that didn't let me appreciate this season, and it left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah. All right. Well, so the last thing I want to talk about, and then we'll get to final thoughts here, is the Yoda thing. So, basically it's like a post-credit scene, but it's not. It's this last final thing that they fit in. When they were telling the Star Wars stories, and we talked about this a little bit when we reviewed Solo, when they were telling the Star Wars stories, they were going to be different. Like, they weren't all going to have to be in the existing world. We weren't going to have to run into all these people all over the place. I still think it's weird that C-3PO was built by Darth Vader. That seems unnecessary to me. You could have been anything. It didn't have to tie in this huge universe. Does it make sense? Do we love the fact that we get to see Yoda? Part of it is fan service. Gotta be fan service that they throw in a character that we know could have been alive back then, right? Because we know he's 400 years old when we meet him. Desi, is that a good thing? Did you go, yes, Yoda, or did you go, what are we doing?
I mean,
you already
of
know
course,
because
yes,
wait a minute,
I
he's
was
in
excited.
Young Jedi Adventures.
He is in Young Jedi Adventures. I was excited to see Yoda, but I did not jump out of my seat and go, "Oh my God!" the same way I did when I saw Plagueis,
Luke.
or when I heard Vanessa say, "It's you, you're alive," and I was like, "Oh my God, it's Imri!" But you got to read the books for that. And so, yes, I was excited to see Yoda. I think that was more for the casual Star Wars fans who aren't as crazy as I am, to be like, oh yeah, look, there's somebody I recognize, there's somebody I know. Because they probably, the casual Star Wars people, like my husband, who's like, who's that? When I got super excited when I saw Plagueis, he got excited because he saw Yoda.
Did you buy him one of those Hasbro Black Series Darth teeth helmets? You don't have to tell me. I don't want to know. All right. So Ron, how about you? Do you think? I mean, I saw Ronald in chat say it was all fan service. Do you feel like that Yoda was necessary, or do we have to wait till season 2 to find out?
If he doesn't appear as a major character trying to fix the crap these Jedi did to the reputation of the Jedi, then it's just fan service and a waste. If he appears in season 2, that's fine. One of the problems with that scene was it felt like the end of Lord of the Rings, where it just kept ending and ending and ending. And I thought the last shot before it, where they're just staring out into whatever planet they're on, was a better ending shot, because those were Star Wars ending shots when it's just characters silently kind of staring, either over the metal throne room or out the window of the Nebula One, or staring at the funeral pyre, things like that. Those were the original Star Wars endings. I think that worked for it. And then the whole Yoda scene, just if it had been before that, might have worked better for me.
Yeah. Nick, same question before we go.
I think they should have completely sold out and had Yoda in halfway through the season. I think everything should have moved along a lot quicker, and I think having the first season, if the first half of this season be basically what this whole season was, I think you could have condensed it and then got us to this really cool idea of introducing Yoda in the High Jedi Council and introducing Plagueis and more Sith-like creatures. Because, by the way, I'm not going to go into detail, but I do basically agree with Desi. I don't think that necessarily Plagueis was already in cahoots with Chimera. Like I don't necessarily think they were already tied together. I don't necessarily think Chimera was a Sith. I think he was just a dark force user, and not necessarily a Sith. So I do kind of agree with a lot of things as he said. So I think introducing Plagueis and then figuring out where he fits in and why he was looking at Chimera, why, what he wanted out of that deal. Because here's the deal. They never promised us a season 2. Like in fact, look, in a lot of the talking about this season, it was just a season, and they didn't talk a lot about like this being a continuous series. And we're in this day and age, we're never promised that stuff. So I don't like when, especially, and I know this is like going. Sometimes we do this. I think we did the same thing with Ahsoka and things like this, where we talk a little bit in the real world here. Where if we talk in the real world, because of the way streaming is these days, we are not promised more seasons of this stuff. And the way Disney is producing this content and suffering, from some of the setbacks on finances because of some of this stuff and streaming and the way it is, what if we don't get a season 2? And I honestly, and I'm sorry for kind of taking over and asking this question to everybody, but I just real quick, does everybody think if this season doesn't have a season 2, was it worth it? Does it matter? Does anything we just watched matter? Because I really don't think so.
It was worth it for me, and I know that it was worth it for a lot of other women.
Yes, okay.
A lot of us who were disappointed in the Reylo ending and Ben dying and then Rey just going back to Tatooine for no reason and staring off into the sunset with BB-8, who wasn't even her droid, made no sense. But being able to see, Osha get seduced to the dark side and them holding hands and looking off into the sunset together felt very like a lot of people, at least on my side of the internet, felt like we were fulfilled with that storyline where we were not fulfilled with the sequels.
So I don't know if this is rare, because I don't know that I've seen it pop up for any of the other series, but it said that this series cost $180 million to make. That's the price of a movie. So it's not cheap television that they're making here. That's, and so I guess to me, when I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, you're saying, was it worth it to the fan? Was it worth it to them financially, especially if there was, some rumblings about this online, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm interested to see if it doesn't get a second season, if it's because of how much the first season cost, because that does seem like an incredible amount of money for TV.
Let me just say, I looking back, I mean, we could have our quibbles about any of these seasons of Star Wars, but I think like any individual season of Mandalorian, even honestly, for me, even Kenobi, there was enough value in that one season that was there was enough in there that kind of fleshed out some of the universe and told me a story and showed me some things that I really wanted to see. Like Andor, even if there is not a season 2, that was a fantastic season of television. That even if there was never a second season, I'd be disappointed, but I'd be like, okay, whatever. This one, again, I just say that there doesn't seem, if there's no season 2, there's no value. Now I'm not saying season 2 can't redeem everything and tell me more of the meat of this story. And I really do think they set up a great story for season 2. Let me say that. As much as I quibble about season 1, I'd be very excited about season 2. Because I think there's a lot of meat on the bone to explore. And if they do it the right way, I think we'd have a fantastic season 2. But season 1 on its own just left me wanting, and not in a good way, not in a "ooh, I can't wait" kind of way. Like I'm sitting on the edge of my seat, cliffhanger. It's like a
Like, you
okay,
better fix this for me.
yeah.
All right, so y'all think about what you want your final recap to be. I want to give a big thank you to everyone who's been watching tonight. We love our wigs, the WDWNT Interglobe Society. Thank you guys for being members and being with us all the time, and we appreciate you. We do have another super chat before we move on. It was Jungle Cruiser, $1.99. Can we just move on and get to Park Center? God bless you. No, we're going to do it all, but don't forget to join us for Park Center this Sunday. As a matter of fact, coming up on Deep in the Plus, we've got already the Liberty Story and Descendants we've done. We did the Acolyte tonight. Wreck-It Ralph is going to be next Wednesday night, and then the following, we're going to do Treasures of the Walt Disney Archives, which is on Disney Plus, which is actually a pretty neat show. We hope you guys will join us for all of those, so thank you for joining us tonight. And again, join us Sunday night for Park Center. We're still doing a lot of live stuff, so we'd love to have you back. But now, here's the moment, which honestly, coming into this, I didn't expect this vibe. I did not. So I can't wait to hear what everyone says when I say, and starting with Nicholas Cicero, would you recommend this series?
No. No. There's no... So, if you're new to Star Wars, there's no way you start here. Like, this is not an introduction to Star Wars. This would be confusing about what Star Wars is all about. And there's no connective tissue to other. There's no real direct connective tissue to other things, in my opinion, to other pieces of Star Wars. So you definitely start elsewhere. And this is, as of right now, it's skippable. Season 2 could prove me wrong, but as of right now, it's skippable. So, like, and if you already know Star Wars, you know. But, like, I mean, in general, if you're asking me if I recommend this, there's no way. Now, that doesn't mean I think that it was as bad as some people think it was. Like I said, it's a very roller coaster ride for me. There are great moments in here. There are fun moments. There are tidbits in here that I think could be good. But overall, I'm sorry, but I still don't really understand the story they were trying to tell me and what the value of this story was. Because I really, it went over my head. I don't get it. I really don't. And I think that they tried to sell a story of these sisters and good and evil, and I think it was all over the place. So there's no way I could really recommend this. And I don't think it's a good showing for the Jedi in any way. Like, even if you're trying to show a fall of the Jedi, I just think they were too... You didn't establish them as anything of authority in the first place, right? Like, so think of this as coming in with no backstory even about the Jedi. We've still never really seen the Jedi at their height. We keep seeing the Jedi as these... Like Ron said, as kind of lackeys for the Galactic Republic, as these fallen heroes, as these outcasts, as these people that are scattered across the galaxy. I guess I kind of, maybe this is my fault, I kind of thought this was going to show them in a bit of a higher standing, and we still didn't get to see that.
Okay. I want to go to Ron last because I feel like I already know what Desi is going to say here. So, Desi, would you recommend? Now, tell him right to his face. Would you recommend this show?
First off, if you want to see the Jedi at the height, watch Young Jedi Adventures.
This show brought to you by Young Jedi Adventures.
You know what? I thought this show was better than Ahsoka. I think if a casual fan wants to come in and their choices are either this show or Ahsoka, I'd say this show, because you can come in and not know who any of the characters are. All you've seen are the 9 films, and all I have to tell you is this takes place before The Phantom Menace, and you're good to go. Ahsoka, that requires a lot of explanation, a lot of background information about who all of the characters are. Also, Sabine gets run through with a lightsaber, means nothing. She's a Jedi all of a sudden out of nowhere. I'm sorry, I thought this show was better. A lot of the people who complain about this show loved Ahsoka, and I don't get how, honestly, somebody would say that for a casual Star Wars fan who hasn't seen a lot of stuff, that Ahsoka would be better than this show. I don't think that it was worth the hate. I do feel like there were definitely some very high highs, like episodes 5, 6, 8 were some of the best Star Wars I've ever seen. Some really low lows. Episodes 3 and 7 were some of the worst Star Wars I had ever seen, and then the other ones were just okay. But I still thoroughly enjoyed it. I think the first 4 episodes spent too much time setting up mystery boxes that we did not have enough time to pay off in the last 4 episodes. Mm-hmm. I think that episode 7, they could have truncated that a lot more and fleshed out a lot more backstory with Chimera. And it's not just because Manny Jacinto is attractive. Chimera as a character was super interesting. I want to know more about him. I want to know more about his relationship with Venestra. I would love to see a season 2. And for all of its flaws, I still really enjoyed this. And I think maybe for the women, for the female casual Star Wars fans, I would say, yes, I recommend this show. For the dude bros who really care about things like Kiadi-Mundi's birthday, no, you're the people who hate Disney Star Wars in general were never, well, no, you're not going to like it. So I think from a woman's perspective, I think women, this show was probably, because it was written for a woman or by a woman, that women would appreciate some of the subtext more than men do.
Okay. Well, and I feel like that's 1 for 1 against, and I feel like this is our wild card here a little bit, but Ron, what are your thoughts?
I can't recommend it. I liked the first half, I really did, but it started to turn. The show didn't know what it wanted to be. I liked the idea of a mystery and the mystery of why she's hunting them down, and then we kind of get it, and it's like, yeah, well, that was predictable. It was broadcast, and then we go off to the turn, and is this actually going to be about the Jedi's arrogance in the fall? But it's not the same kind of arrogance. Yes, the Jedi believed in their own power and that they were almost infallible in the prequel era. They just weren't kind of ineptly like malicious at times, and a lot of it was a Padawan's fault that all of this happened, but it still doesn't excuse it, and it just doesn't feel cohesive as a thing. There were some great moments. I really did like the fight choreography and what they did with that. I think it left some good mysteries open, but there was an editing and pacing issue throughout the season that really needed to be fixed for me to recommend this thing as a whole.
Okay. I mean, I do think there was a lot of good fighting. I think some of the stuff they did with the lightsabers, especially like at the very end where they slice off the top of the lightsaber and it's like, okay, this isn't going to work now. Wow. Why don't they do that all the time? Like that would be great. I think there was a lot of cool fighting.
That was Cortosis. He wasn't slicing off the
at the very end when his was sliced by Saul is what I'm talking about. His was sliced off by Saul. But anyway, I think that all of you guys made great points. And so I can't wait to see what the comments say after this. So hopefully you guys will leave us some comments. But again, I appreciate everybody on the panel being here tonight. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for like kind of being the Star Wars crew. What is even next? I don't even know. What's on the docket next?
Skeleton Crew? Yeah.
Okay, when is that? I don't even know.
This fall.
I feel like that there's so many shows that we talked about before, like that the last D23 that like kind of got moved around and delayed because of COVID and all these other things originally, and so it'll be interesting to see in a couple of weeks when D23 happens again if they have some new announcements, or next week at San Diego Comic-Con if there are some new Star Wars announcements coming our way. But I know that Daisy Ridley's all set to do some more Ray, so that's going to be kind of cool. Anyway, thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for watching so much. We appreciate it. I hope you have a great week, and hopefully we will see you Sunday night for Park Center, and right back here again next Wednesday night for another Deep in the Plus. Take care.